Hello, lovelies. Welcome to this month's edition of Sisters in Mental Illness. My name is Shaylee Hugendorn. You can find my story about bipolar 2 if you want to search in other blog posts. But I am so excited today because I have my friend Crystal here with me. Again, brave soul here to talk about different struggles that she has had, and we just have so much to learn from her. Crystal, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about who you are.
Sure. So my name is Crystal. I am a mama to 5 awesome kiddos. Some joined our family by birth, some joined our family by adoption. I have a background in healthcare and critical care, and I run a nonprofit with a friend where we focus on mental health services for adopted and foster kiddos.
So just a few things, right?
Just a couple.
Just a smidge. I met Crystal probably like a year ago, maybe more.
In real life.
Yeah, in real life. Oh yeah, because online, of course. And we really bonded talking about mental health, and we just really connected. It's something that you can connect really quickly when you talk about, and something that we talk about a lot, and is the concept of that we are canaries. And this comes from Glennon Doyle. She talks a lot about this and about how when you go into a mine and they put a canary in to see if it's safe enough to go in there, and they're the canaries are the people that tell us that things are not okay. And if you want to elaborate a little bit on that, I would love to hear.
Yeah, so I think the biggest part for me as a person who has struggled with a variety of different mental health, I hate the words concerns, or maybe differences is a better word. Sometimes our society and our world puts on us that something is wrong with us, or that we don't fit. But I think, like Glennon likes to refer to, we are actually, we point to a bigger societal issue. We have a hypersensitivity to things, we feel things. There's always a flip side to my struggles that are also my giftings. And so as the canaries are important, and at one time maybe we would have been referred to as prophets, maybe we would have been referred to as teachers. You and I have talked about too, at other times we would have maybe been referred to as hysterics or witches. So there have been good or bad things throughout society, and throughout the years we talk about mental health. But I think it's important that we have the conversation around that this is not always a disorder, or this is not just a set of tragic circumstances in my life, but there's also beauty in the ashes of this journey.
Yes, I love that. Messy beauty, right?
Messy beauty.
Yeah, and I think that that's one of the main reasons that we're here, putting ourselves out there, because it's not the funnest topic to talk about, but we're here because we think it's important. And I think there's people out there, and we want to find our canaries, and we want to tell them that you are loved and that you belong.
You will flock with us.
Yes, we're here. I wanted to hear, Crystal, a little bit more about when in your life did you know you needed help? When did you become aware that that maybe you weren't doing okay?
Sure. So I would say in my early 20s, motherhood, when I became a mom for the first time, was when I really realized that I was not okay. But I think if we go back farther than that, had I known more, I would have known that I was always not okay. So I'm a person who's lived with anxiety for most of my life. But that as a child really transformed into being super high achieving, over scheduling, being super busy. So in an effort to find control in my teen years, that translated into struggling and with eating disorder, with anorexia. But those things they're societally okay. I was a high achieving child. That's a good thing. I was a skinny teenager. That's a great thing. So it can be very difficult to tease out those that you're not okay when society is telling you that the things that you're doing look okay or are productive. So for me, I really grasped a realization of my mental health differences when I became a mom for the first time. So my first son, so I was 25, my first son was super colicky. He never stopped crying, and we took shifts to bounce him to sleep on an exercise ball for the first 6 weeks that he was alive. I couldn't put him down throughout the day, or he would just start screaming, and it would go on for hours and hours without being comfortable, like getting him comforted. And so kind of being thrown into motherhood changes your life anyways. I was a woman with a career that I loved, and motherhood was something I always desperately wanted. It was my greatest dream. I knew I wanted to be a mama, but the change was so hard and so drastic. And I remember saying to my husband one day, I'm not okay. I feel like I'm losing my mind. But I'm a person who's very high functioning. So I looked okay. I was doing all the things. I was getting out of bed. Everybody was getting cared for. All of the meals were getting made. And so I remember him saying to me, you're fine. Like, you're fine. I think you just baby blues, or this is hard. It's supposed to be hard. So I thought, okay, well, this is supposed to be hard. So, and I look okay, so I must be okay. And then my boys are very close together. So we have 2 sons who were born 17 months apart. And so when my second son was born, it progressed into quite severe postpartum anxiety, and so crippling anxiety, and was having 7 or 8 panic attacks a day, couldn't leave my house, and knew that I needed help. But for the first time in my life, I was now reaching a point of being not functional. And that scared me, but it also scared me in a societal way, because my deepest fear was that someone was going to say, you're not adequate as a mother. There's so much misuse of even terms like postpartum depression, where we throw that around and we think that means women who drive their children into rivers and drown them all. And we're not having real honest conversations about the spectrum of postpartum disorders. Anyway, so that's a little bit of a rabbit trail, but so I showed up at the doctor's office for what I thought was my son's 3-month appointment. I had a 3-month-old, I had a 19-month-old in tow, and the very sweet, very young desk clerk cheerfully said to me, oh, your appointment's actually not till tomorrow. And I remember clinging to the desk that I could not leave, because if I left, I couldn't get myself back there, because it took everything I had to bring this child out into public, because I was so sure that something horrible was going to happen to him, and it was going to be all my fault, and I wasn't going to be able to protect him, and my anxiety was just through the roof. And thankfully, the nurse practitioner at the clinic was faxing something from the desk and was there and saw me and said, we're actually just going to go into my office. And took one look at my son and said, this big giant fat baby is just fine, but you're not okay, and we need to talk about you not being okay. And so that was the first step into the first time in my life that I was on medication for my anxiety, and in counseling for my anxiety. So that's how I knew I wasn't okay.
Wow. I think we were talking a little bit about language. We were talking about how it's so great that now we're using some of this language, but I was saying one of the fears, or one thing I'm noticing, is now we're overusing the language. So we're using depression versus sad, right? And what's clinical and what's not. And I think that we were saying, I don't know if the medical field wants to think it would be too scary or what, but I was saying, like, we almost need a list. Like, this is postpartum depression that will probably go away in a little bit. This is, this is more. This is when you need to get help. And you are a good mother. Yes, right? And especially if you go and get help, right? But I mean, it's a scary thing, especially, I don't know how you feel about this, but especially in the Christian world, where, sometimes it's motherhood is the goal, and you're glowing, and this is your life's calling almost. And I wonder, did you being a woman of faith, did you experience any of that? And
so in the midst of all this, I was a pastor's wife. So I was not only doing this, but doing this on a very public platform in some ways, but not a platform that I could be very honest in. So there was an expectation, I think in the church we have a tendency to elevate our leadership and put them on a platform. And so my foray into pastor's wifehood was a realization that it's an extremely lonely place to be, because you are constantly in the lives of other people, but they're not in your life in a reciprocal way. The relationships are very one-sided, unfortunately. So that was difficult, I think, too, like you said, in the medical field, but also in the church. We don't like to talk about the spectrum of mental illness. I wish we would talk about the spectrum and all of this gray. So depression can be a situational experience in a really hard time in your life that the situation is going to alleviate and your symptoms are going to go with that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's okay to call that depression. It's okay to say that you had situational depression. That is a legitimate thing, and we should call that. But I think too often, if you can't pray it away, is the big one, or pull yourself out of it, or sometimes you're living in something that isn't going to go away. You have been thrown into a situation in your life that you didn't expect. We were handed this super colicky baby who screamed for the first 10 months of his life around the clock, or you have a child who was born with a difference you didn't expect, or your marriage has fallen apart. So, or whatever it is, your situation is not going to change for you in the moment. And I love the saying that if you can't produce your own neurotransmitters, it's totally fine to buy them. Totally fine.
In a bottle.
So,
I'll take it.
Beautiful. Right? And two, because the first time as a high functioning person, I had lived with so much anxiety. I had lived so close to the line all the time that I had never known what it felt like to not feel anxious. Mm-hmm. So for the first time in my life on medication, I went, I didn't always have to feel like that. Like I had lived, I felt like there were so many years of my life that were wasted.
Oh my gosh.
Feeling. It was brutal.
Yes.
Because I didn't have to feel like that.
I remember the first time I was like, this is how people could feel in the winter. I actually still am struggling. I'm working through the whole like it does feel like a waste, and it does feel like what I could have done. And I try not to go there too much, but because I know, I learned a lot.
But all of this came out of that.
So, yes, but it's still hard. If people say, I think that it's a beautiful thing to claim it and own it, but I don't feel like some other people, like it's an entire gift. Like if you told me you could take it away, absolutely I would. I would hope that it would make me a totally different person, but I still would.
Well,
how about you?
That's a hard one, because it's life would be a lot simpler without it, right? There's for me, there's a realization of the pain that exists in our world and the brokenness that exists in our world that comes out of this journey for me. So that's a hard one. I don't know if I would take it away from myself as a mama. That's if someone said to me, well, do you want your kids to feel this way? In a heartbeat, I would be like, no, please, easy. Like that's what you do as a mom, right? But at the same time, I'm really trying to embrace the flip side gifts of these differences. There's a lot of neurodiversity in our family, and there's a lot of gifts on the flip side of that.
Which brings us to the canary thing. I think, and I just say all the time when I'm challenged about miracles or going to events about healing, about that, and I say, well, do I believe that I could be healed? Do I believe Jesus heals? Absolutely, I do. But what do we do in the meantime? We can't sit here, just waiting. But right?
And then even, do you need to be healed?
Exactly. Right? Does
God even think that you need to be healed?
Right.
Or is this how you were created purposefully? So are you not being healed necessarily because healing's not what you need? So, and that's a big one for me. I once heard a pastor talk about, so when Peter walks on water and Jesus, calls Peter out of the boat, and he gets out of the boat and steps and he walks on water, and the rest of the disciples stayed in the boat. And sometimes in Christianity, we have this idea that they were unfaithful and that they didn't step out of the water and they didn't have enough faith in God. But what if all that they could do was stay in the boat? They stayed in the boat. They didn't run away. They got in the boat in the first place. And they were hanging on, and they stayed in the boat. And maybe sometimes at certain seasons in our life, all we can do is hang on and stay in the boat.
So good.
And that's okay. It's okay to be in the boat. And I think it's okay to Jesus. Jesus didn't, they were still his disciples afterwards.
Right.
Peter wasn't elevated above everyone else. And, Peter had his own journey. They had their own journey. And Jesus was okay with that. So I think sometimes maybe we need to stop thinking that we are broken.
Yes.
maybe we need extra help in
Yeah.
certain areas. Maybe we need to buy our neurotransmitters.
Yep.
Maybe because unfortunately we do have to live in the world.
Yeah.
Like if I could live on an island of anxious people who understood how the world felt to me, maybe it would be different. But that isn't the world, and so I need to be able to function in it. And I need my store-bought neurotransmitters sometimes to do that.
Yeah.
And that's okay. But maybe we're not broken.
Yeah. And I think too, it's this, as you talked about the societal thing and the canaries pointing to that, or maybe it would be considered a profit or things like that. I think that is true. It's what we look at as successful as a society, right? Mm-hmm. What we see, but we see over and over again in North America, society is that, more, bigger, better, faster, we have all these technologies to help us do more work and, or we're multifunctioning or all those things, but maybe that wasn't how we were supposed to be. I mean, we see mm-hmm. people,
the rise in anxiety.
Yeah.
For one, right? The rise in childhood anxiety. Our kids are crumbling under these expectations of them. And so I think that is a big, and I know for myself, a big part of my journey has also been self-care. And that's a really hard word because it's thrown around a lot. Yeah. And so that's not, seeing a funny movie and getting pedicures necessarily. And I've had to learn that. Those things are beautiful. Mm-hmm. I love my massages. I love, those things are wonderful and lovely treats. But as I've walked this journey, and the parts of it we'll talk in the next video, it's been learning that self-care is choosing myself. I matter. And as a mom to 5 kids, it's very easy to get their seconds. And so that's been a big part, is that I deserve and I need, and it's a part of my mental health journey to exercise and put food into my body that's going to fuel it. And to be very careful that doesn't become a compulsion, because it has at other times in my life, but that it's a choice to pick myself and to be worth doing these things. And so, it's going to my own counseling appointments, even though they all have their schedules and the money is being spent in that direction. So I think that sometimes we have to talk about that too, that we need to choose, we have value, and the things that we need to do to stay healthy have value, and we need to do them.
Yeah. I was listening to someone speak on the weekend. They're doing a mental health kind of series at Open Door, and I've had the privilege of being able to speak there and be with other people. And there was someone, and it was a brave male who was speaking about it. I know. And he was talking about a bit about self-care and a bit about health. And he said, this is something that's fluid. And I was like, ding, 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 ding.
Yes.
Because, I get a lot of questions about, what works for you and what does your self-care look like, which are really important questions. But I remember being like that too. I wanted someone to hand me, like, we want the answer. And I realized, because I keep changing, and I'm like, can't you give just a solid answer? And I realized, like, it's fluid.
So fluid.
What I needed when my kids were little is different than what I need now. And taking that time and showing up for yourself.
And it's not always going to look, there was a season 2 years ago when it looked like choosing the ice cream because that's what I needed. And being okay with that, and being okay with not doing the exercise and not doing those things, because I was in the boat hanging on. And so I needed to do the things that provided me with little boosts of joy in the moment. And that was okay for a season. And then I progressed to the point, where life had settled a little bit more, the situation had changed, where I needed to say, this is no longer healthy. And I need to choose to do things that are healthy for me, that look different. And so I agree with you. Sometimes it can be healthy for a season. And then what you need changes in the next season. And so it's a big part of that, and a big part of it, I think, is that idea of reconnecting to self. So Bessel van der Kolk, who's kind of the godfather of trauma work, and that's a big piece that we lose in trauma throughout our lives, is the connection to ourselves, and being able to listen to ourselves and what we need. So I think that's a big piece of this journey, is reconnecting to yourself and listening to what it needs and trusting yourself. I know for me, in my mental health journey over the years, that's something, especially struggling with anxiety, when your alarm bells are going off in your head all the time, you become very desensitized
Yes.
to them. So you learn to not listen to them because
Yeah.
most of the time they're
Lying.
wrong, they're lying to you.
Yeah.
But the journey back from that is connecting to yourself
Yeah.
in the things that you need to listen to.
Yeah.
But it can be a long road.
Yeah. And different things, like I always think of, you know, my tendency is to numb in socially acceptable ways, right? Like, you know, I'm grateful that I had the support and had the things, but I always think like I could have been 1 or 2 steps away from drugs or other things just to relieve the pain. And actually that circles back to the beautiful thing that you were saying about accepting it, accepting yourself, is that to know, I think if I wasn't a canary, I might not realize and have compassion for people that are medicating in different ways. I might have judgment, whereas I see a person and I see, you know, an addict, or I see people doing different things to numb, and I get it. Because sometimes it's just too hard. Is it okay? Do we need to reach out and help? Yes. And I just love what you said about the high functioning part, because that is a praised numbing. And I love how you said that, and I'm hoping that, you know, we can be the canaries that point that. And Crystal and I talk a lot about children, and we talk about mental health with children. So I would just love if you would click through to the next video. We could talk a little bit more about that and just hear all the wisdom that my friend Crystal has.